The ambush. The cargo vessel Helios drifted through the starlit void of the Cygnus corridor, its utilitarian hull reflecting the distant glow of the nebula that stretched across the sector. To any observer, the ship was unremarkable, a standard Class 4 transport with minimal shielding and no obvious weapon arrays. Its registry listed it as a basic supply runner for the outer colonies, carrying agricultural equipment, medical supplies, and construction materials. Nothing worth dying for, certainly nothing worth killing for. Captain Lena Torres stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the sensor displays. At 46, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived things that should have killed her. The faint scar that ran from her right temple to the corner of her mouth only added to the impression. "Status report," she said, voice low but carrying easily across the bridge. Dr. Kai Nakamura looked up from his console, brushing his silver-streaked hair away from his face. Environmental systems operating at optimal levels. Life support stable. His fingers danced across the holographic interface with practiced precision. For a ship botanist, his familiarity with ship systems seemed oddly comprehensive. "Nav charts show clear sailing for the next 12 hours, said Eleni Stavros, the ship's navigator. Her Greek accent became more pronounced when she concentrated. "Though we are approaching the edge of regulated space." Torres nodded. "And security." Marcus Chen, nominally listed as the ship's logistics officer, gave a lazy smile that didn't reach his eyes. "All quiet, Captain. Not a blip for 3 days." He stretched, his loose-fitting jumpsuit hiding the powerful physique beneath, starting to think this run might actually be boring. "Never wish for excitement in deep space, Chen," Torres replied, though there was no real reproach in her tone. "Boredom means we all get paid." The Helios had a crew of 10, small for a ship of its size, but efficient. Each member was highly specialized in their field, at least according to their official documentation. The manifest stated they were transporting supplies to the struggling colony on Proxima Vi. Agricultural equipment, medical supplies, water filtration systems, standard humanitarian aid. What the manifest didn't mention was why a simple supply run needed a crew with their particular backgrounds. The proximity alert chimed, a soft but insistent sound that immediately brought the bridge crew to attention. "Contact," reported Stavros, her fingers moving rapidly over the controls. "Coming in fast from the port bow. Not broadcasting identification." Torres didn't seem surprised. "Time to intercept. 8 minutes, maximum." She nodded again, as if this had been expected. "All hands," she announced over the ship-wide communication system. "Prepare for visitors. Protocol Epsilon." Throughout the ship, the crew paused in their tasks. No one panicked. No one rushed. Instead, they moved with practiced efficiency to their designated stations. Within moments, the Helios continued on its course, appearing to all external sensors as an ordinary, unsuspecting cargo vessel, easy prey. Aboard the Void Render, Draktul stood at the command platform, his massive frame dominating the bridge. The Vorn captain's leathery gray skin glistened under the harsh lighting, the ridge of spines along his back rising in anticipation. 4 eyes, 2 large primary ones, and 2 smaller secondary ones, focused on the holographic display of the human ship. "Analysis," he demanded, mandibles clicking. His second-in-command, Jex, consulted the sensor readings. "Human vessel, Captain. Transport class. Minimal shielding. No weapons signatures detected. Crew complement appears to be." He paused, double-checking the readings. Only 10 life forms. Draktul's mandibles spread in the Vorn equivalent of a smile. 10 humans against 30 Vorn warriors. The universe offers us a gift today. The ship's registry indicates it's carrying supplies to the Proxima colony, continued Jex. Agricultural equipment, medical technology, water filtration systems. Valuable cargo, Draktul rumbled. And humans themselves fetch a high price in certain markets. Their adaptability makes them prized specimens. Like many spacefaring species, the Vorn knew of Earth's classification as a death world. Humans had evolved on a planet with punishing gravity, extreme weather patterns, and an endless array of predators and diseases. It had forged them into one of the most physically resilient species in the known galaxy. What the Vorn failed to appreciate, however, was that physical resilience was merely the beginning of humanity's survival toolkit. "Shall we hail them, demand surrender?" asked Jex. Dractol made a dismissive gesture with one clawed hand. "Why waste the time? They have no weapons, no significant shields. Disable their engines and communications. Standard approach." Purple energy lanced from the void render, enveloping the Helios in crackling electromagnetic tendrils that crawled across its hull. The human ship's engines flickered and died, leaving it adrift. "Clean hit," reported the weapons officer. "Their primary systems are disabled." "Excellent," Dractol rumbled. "Prepare boarding parties. I want them taken alive whenever possible." As the boarding shuttles prepared to launch, none of the Vorn noticed the lack of distress signals from the human vessel. None of them questioned why a ship traveling in pirate-infested space would be so poorly defended. None of them wondered why the humans weren't attempting to flee or negotiate. It was the first of many mistakes they would make that day. The Vorn boarding party cut through the Helios airlock with precision tools designed for the purpose. 20 warriors in combat exoskeletons flooded into the ship, disruptor rifles raised. They expected resistance. Barricades, perhaps, or even the desperation of cornered prey. Instead, they found Captain Torres and 3 of her crew standing calmly in the main corridor, hands raised in surrender. "Welcome aboard the Helios," Torres said, her voice steady. "We're an unarmed civilian transport. We won't resist." Jex, leading the boarding party, felt his spines twitch with suspicion. This was too easy. In his experience, prey either fought or fled. They didn't welcome predators with such calm professionalism. "Secure them," he ordered, watching carefully as his warriors bound the humans' wrists with polymer restraints designed to withstand 3 times standard human strength. "Search the ship. Find the rest of the crew." As the pirates dispersed through the vessel, Torres's eyes met those of her crew members briefly. No words were exchanged, but something passed between them. A shared understanding, perhaps, or a promise. Dractol strode through the airlock minutes later, his massive frame dwarfing the humans before him. He surveyed the captives with the practiced eye of someone assessing merchandise. "Your ship and its contents now belong to the Vorn Consortium," he announced, his translator adding threatening bass tones to his naturally clicking speech. "Your lives are mine to sell or dispose of as I see fit." Torres nodded as if accepting a minor inconvenience. "May I introduce my crew? Dr. Kai Nakamura, our botanist. Eleni Stavros, navigator. Marcus Chen, logistics officer." The casual introductions unsettled Dractol, though he didn't show it. "Take them to separate holding areas," he ordered. "Begin inventory of the cargo." As 2 pirates led Torres away, she called back, "Captain, our life support systems require regular maintenance in deep space. Dr. Nakamura should check the environmental controls soon." "Your comfort is not my concern," Dractol dismissed. Nakamura, a slender man with calm eyes, shrugged. "Just trying to be helpful. Those systems can be temperamental if you don't understand human equipment." In the cargo hold, pirates were scanning crates and containers, cataloging their contents. "Agricultural equipment as listed, Captain," reported one subordinate. "Hydroponic systems, soil analyzers, cultivation tools, medical supplies, construction materials, nothing that can be used as weapons." Dractol paced the length of the hold, his instincts still unsettled. "Continue searching. There must be something of value beyond the obvious." Throughout the ship, the remaining crew members were being located and detained. Unlike many captured crews Dractol had encountered, these humans showed no fear. They were watchful, observant. Some even seemed curious about their captors. It was disconcerting. In the ship's botanical lab, Nakamura was explaining various earth plants growing in sealed containers to a curious pirate guard. "This one is particularly interesting," he said, indicating a vibrant flowering specimen with purple blooms. "On Earth, it's found in regions with high volcanic activity. Remarkable adaptability to toxic environments." The guard leaned closer despite himself. "It survives in poison." "Not just survives," Nakamura corrected with a small smile. "It thrives. Converts the toxins into nutrients. Evolution is fascinating, don't you think? How life finds a way to turn danger into advantage." Elsewhere on the ship, Navigator Stavros examined her captors with focused intensity. "Your ship has quantum displacement engines, doesn't it?" she asked her guard casually. "I've always admired their efficiency, though the spatial alignment depends heavily on the central matrix calibration." The guard shifted uncomfortably, unsure why this human was discussing propulsion systems when she should be cowering in fear. Throughout the Helios, similar scenes played out as the captured humans made observations that seemed innocuous on the surface, but left the pirates increasingly uneasy. And when Captain Torres was brought to Drak-Tul for interrogation, her smile reminded him of something he couldn't quite place until he remembered the apex predators of his own homeworld. The ones that didn't need to rush because the prey was already exactly where they wanted it. "I have questions for you, human," Drak-Tul growled, looming over Torres in the ship's conference room, now repurposed as an interrogation chamber. "I imagine you do," Torres replied, meeting his 4 eyes without flinching. "But first, I'm curious. Have you ever wondered why a cargo ship would travel through pirate territory without escorts or weapons?" Drak-Tul's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Because humans are arrogant or foolish. Often both." Torres's smile widened slightly. "Perhaps, or perhaps because sometimes, Captain," she leaned forward despite her restraints, "the cargo is the weapon." And somewhere deep in the ship, the atmospheric controls began to cycle. The reckoning. Drak-Tul's secondary eyes narrowed as he processed Torres's cryptic statement. "What game are you playing, human? My warriors have searched your ship. There are no weapons aboard." "That depends entirely on how you define weapon," Torres replied. Her bound hands rested calmly on the table between them. "Some cultures believe knowledge is the ultimate weapon. Others say timing is everything." The Vorn captain's spines flattened against his back, a sign of aggression. "Your riddles waste my time. You will tell me your true destination and cargo, or I will start removing parts from your crew members." Torres's expression hardened. "Touch my crew, and this ends badly for everyone. I'm giving you one chance, Captain. Take your people and leave my ship now." Drak-Tul's laughter echoed through the room, a harsh clicking sound that set human teeth on edge. "You are in no position to make threats, human. Your ship is disabled. Your crew is captive, and you have no weapons." "I've never needed weapons," Torres said simply. "The universe provides everything necessary, if you know how to use it." Before Drak-Tul could respond, his communication device buzzed. "Captain," came Jex's voice, sounding strained. "Something's wrong with the environmental systems." "Be specific," Drak-Tul snapped. "The air, it's changing. Several warriors are reporting dizziness, confusion. The human botanist says." "What does the human say?" Drak-Tul demanded when Jex paused. "He says we're being poisoned by the plants. Claims it's an automatic response to our boarding, that the life support is cycling air through the botanical lab as a defense mechanism." Drak-Tul's 4 eyes locked onto Torres, who hadn't moved, hadn't flinched, hadn't shown any concern about potentially toxic air. "Your crew will suffer the same fate," he warned. Torres shook her head. "Human adaptability, remember. Dr. Nakamura has been cultivating those particular specimens for years. We've developed a tolerance." She tilted her head. "You're probably feeling it already. Slight disorientation, increased heart rate, difficulty focusing. It'll get worse." For the first time, Drak-Tul realized the human captain's pupils were unnaturally dilated, His own vision seemed to blur at the edges, and the room felt suddenly warmer. "What have you done?" he growled. "I told you," Torres replied calmly. "Sometimes the cargo is the weapon." In the botanical lab, Dr. Nakamura watched with clinical interest as the two Vorn guards assigned to him slumped to the floor, their nervous systems overwhelmed by the airborne compounds being released by his specially cultivated specimens. The restraints they'd placed on him had been designed for human physiology. They hadn't accounted for the unusual flexibility he'd developed through years of specialized yoga training. He slipped his hands free with a practiced motion, picked up the nearest guard's communication device, and spoke into it. "This is Dr. Nakamura. If anyone can hear me, I recommend immediate evacuation. The atmospheric changes will reach lethal levels for Vorn physiology within 20 minutes. You are experiencing the effects of multiple neuroactive compounds derived from Terran botanical specimens. There is no antidote aboard." He placed the device down carefully and moved to a sealed cabinet, entering a code that released the lock. Inside were hyposprays containing a prophylactic compound. He took one and pressed it against his neck, then gathered the remaining doses for his crewmates. Time to find the others. In the engine room, Engineer Sophia Diaz had been watching her two guards with measured patience. When they began to show signs of disorientation, mandibles clicking erratically, movements becoming uncoordinated, she knew Nakamura's defense system had activated. The Vorn had searched her thoroughly upon capture, but had missed the micro-tools embedded in the seams of her jumpsuit. Amateur mistake. She'd spent 5 years in the advanced engineering course before joining the Helios crew. Extracting hidden tools was basic training. Within moments, she had freed herself from the restraints and was accessing the ship's systems through a maintenance panel. The Vorn had disabled the main engines, but hadn't bothered with the auxiliary power grid. Another oversight. They clearly didn't understand human redundancy protocols. With quick, practiced movements, Diaz bypassed the main control systems and rerouted power through secondary channels. The ship's emergency lighting flickered on, casting the engine room in a soft blue glow. She smiled grimly as she worked, knowing every system on the Helios had been designed with exactly this scenario in mind. Engineering to Captain Torres, she whispered into her concealed comm unit, activated by a specific pattern of taps against her collarbone. "I've restored auxiliary power. Life support is under our control now. Initiating lockdown protocols in sectors 7 through 12. Throughout the ship, bulkheads began to close, systematically isolating groups of Vorn pirates from each other. The coordinated response had begun. In the cargo hold, Marcus Chen watched as his 3 guards struggled to remain standing. Their exoskeletons, designed to enhance their already considerable strength, now seemed to weigh them down as the neurotoxins affected their motor control. Chen had been sitting quietly, observing, waiting for this precise moment. His official title, Logistics Officer, was technically accurate but drastically incomplete. Before joining the Helios, Chen had served 15 years in special response teams, specializing in close-quarters combat against non-human adversaries. His personnel file had more redacted sections than visible text. As the first guard collapsed, Chen moved. Despite his restraints, he launched himself forward, using momentum and leverage to bring down the second guard. A quick twist, a sharp crack, and his hands were free. The third guard managed to raise his weapon, but Chen was already too close. 3 precise strikes later, the Vorn warrior joined his companions on the deck. Chen accessed the nearest terminal, entering commands to unlock specific cargo containers, the ones containing equipment that wouldn't appear as weapons to standard scans, but could certainly function as such in trained hands. Chen to all points, he said into the comm unit he'd retrieved from one of the unconscious guards. "I'm distributing equipment. Rendezvous at Checkpoint Delta." On the bridge, Eleni Stavros had been systematically collecting information while appearing to cooperate with her captors. The Vorn had been careless, discussing tactical information in front of her. Assuming that a human navigator wouldn't understand the technical aspects of their ship's systems, They didn't know she'd spent 8 years in naval intelligence before being recruited for the Helios mission. When her guards began showing signs of the neurotoxin's effects, Stavros was ready. She'd already memorized the Void Render's command codes displayed on the terminals her captors had accessed. As the last guard slumped against a console, she freed herself and immediately began entering sequences into the navigation system. Bridge secured, she reported calmly through the ship's internal communication system, now back under human control. I've accessed their command network. Their ship's security protocols are embarrassingly primitive. Across the displays, schematics of the Vorn vessel appeared, highlighting vulnerabilities and access points. With a few more commands, she locked the Void Render's engines into a diagnostic cycle, effectively preventing the pirate ship from leaving without manual override from their engineering section. "No one's going anywhere without our permission," she murmured, a ghost of a smile playing across her lips. In the conference room, Draktul struggled to remain focused as the neurotoxins worked their way through his system. His massive form swayed, mandibles clicking erratically as he fought against the encroaching disorientation. "What are you?" he managed to ask, all four eyes struggling to maintain focus on Torres. The human captain stood, her restraints now lying broken on the table between them. She hadn't needed to escape before. She'd simply been waiting for the right moment. "We're exactly what we appear to be, Captain. A cargo vessel with a humanitarian mission." Torres circled the table slowly. "The Helios is a protection detail for the Proxima colony. We transport legitimate supplies, but our primary mission is to eliminate threats in this sector." "Without weapons?" Draktul slurred, his translator struggling to interpret his increasingly uncoordinated speech patterns. "Conventional weapons draw attention," Torres explained calmly. "They escalate situations unnecessarily. Our approach is more ecological." The door slid open, and Dr. Nakamura entered, carrying hyposprays. He administered one to Torres before checking Draktul's vital signs with professional detachment. "The others?" Torres asked. "All free and accounted for. Chen is distributing equipment, Diaz has restored our systems, and Stavros has locked down the pirate vessel." Nakamura glanced at his medical scanner. "This one will live, though he'll have approximately 12 hours of extreme discomfort ahead of him." Torres nodded, turning her attention back to the Vorn captain. "Here's what happens next, Draktul. Your crew will be confined to your vessel. We'll tow you to the nearest Galactic Consortium outpost, where you'll face charges for piracy. Your ship and assets will be seized and distributed to the colonies you've been preying upon." "You can't," Draktul began, but found himself unable to complete the thought as consciousness began to slip away. "We can, and we will," Torres corrected. "The days of pirates freely hunting in this sector are over." 6 hours later, the Helios moved through space under its own power once more, the disabled Void Render secured in a tractor beam behind it. On the bridge, the full crew had resumed their stations, operations continuing as if the Vorn attack had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "Status report," Torres called, settling into her command chair. "All systems functioning normally," reported Diaz from engineering. "No lasting damage from the Vorn's disabling pulse." "The prisoners?" Torres asked. "Secure in their own ship's break," Chen responded. "Still experiencing effects from the neurotoxins, but Dr. Nakamura has administered enough countermeasures to ensure they'll survive the journey to the outpost." Torres nodded, satisfied. "Nakamura, status of the botanical defense system." The botanist looked up from his console. "Plants are recovering nicely. The automated dispersal system worked exactly as designed. I've adjusted the atmospheric scrubbers to clear the remaining compounds." "Time to the consortium outpost," Torres asked Stavros. 28 hours at current speed," the navigator replied. "I've already transmitted our situation report. They're expecting us." Torres leaned back in her chair, a rare smile softening her features. "Well done, everyone. Standard after-action reports by 800 tomorrow." As the crew returned to their duties, Torres accessed her personal terminal to update her mission log. Captain's log, supplemental. Another pirate band neutralized without conventional weapons or casualties on either side. This marks the 5th successful interdiction since the Helios program began. The Vorn clearly underestimated human ingenuity and adaptability, a common mistake among species that rely primarily on physical strength or technological advantages. Our unique approach continues to prove effective. By combining specialized personnel with biological deterrence and psychological warfare, we've developed a defense system that doesn't register on standard weapon scans. The pirates board expecting easy prey and find themselves facing an entirely different kind of threat. Once again, Nakamura's botanical defense system performed flawlessly. The neurotoxin cocktail specifically targets non-human nervous systems while leaving humans unaffected. Combined with the antidote our crew takes prophylactically, it gives us a decisive advantage that no conventional weapon could provide. As we approach the halfway point of our mission, I remain convinced that this program represents the future of human security operations in contested space. We don't need destroyers or battleships to protect our colonies. Sometimes the most effective weapons aren't weapons at all. End log. Torres closed her terminal and surveyed her bridge crew with quiet pride. The Helios wasn't classified as a warship. It carried no railguns, no missile arrays, no energy weapons. Its defenses wouldn't register on any military scan, and yet it had proven more effective at neutralizing threats than an entire squadron of patrol cruisers. Because sometimes the deadliest weapon wasn't a weapon at all. It was the human capacity to turn disadvantage into opportunity. It was creativity, adaptability, the willingness to approach problems from unexpected angles. As the Helios continued on its course, the stars streaked past its viewports, indifferent to the small dramas playing out against the vast backdrop of space. And aboard a seemingly unremarkable cargo vessel, a crew of seemingly ordinary humans went about their extraordinary work, proving once again that the most dangerous species in the galaxy rarely needed to bare its teeth to win.